you for watching this Sustainability Chat. The Sustainability Institute's free programming is only available thanks to our generous members and supporters. If you find what we do meaningful, please consider becoming a member today by heading to our website, sustaininstitute.com. Once there, you can find more information by clicking the Become a Member or Donate button at the top of your screen. Membership support at any level is greatly appreciated, and your contribution is tax deductible. We especially want to thank our highest tier members, including our committed advocates and cheering champions. Thank you! Now on to today's Sustainability Chat with Ethos Green Power Cooperative.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Casey Meehan, and I direct programming for the Sustainability Institute. The Sustainability Institute is a 501c3 that's located in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and our mission is really to help celebrate sustainability and sustainable actions that are happening in the driftless area of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. So if you're not familiar with the Sustainability Institute, we frame a lot of our work on what's called the global goals of sustainability. Sometimes they're also called the Good Life Goals. And what these are 17 interrelated goals that focus on addressing some of the world's biggest challenges right now, including inequity and poverty and climate change. And speaking of climate change, that's one of the things that we are really, really focused on. We know right now that the cause of climate change is fossil fuels that we're burning and carbon that's going into the atmosphere. And one of the primary factors that's putting pollution into our atmosphere right now is our generation of electric power. So right now, the latest data that was available in 2022 shows that about 25% of our greenhouse gas emissions can be attributed to the electric power that we're producing. Now, in the city of La Crosse, it's actually a little bit higher. We're about 27.7% of greenhouse gases can be attributed to burning fossil fuels that we need for electricity to fuel our, to light our houses. So if we're really serious about reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, we need to both reduce the amount of electricity that we use just through common sense efficiency measures, but we also need to scale up cleaner ways of producing the electricity that we do use, like using solar power. Now, here's the good news, that when it comes to solar generation, we're actually on the right track. The cost of solar panels right now has really dropped dramatically over the last 40 years or so. As this chart shows, that if you take a look at that blue line, in the early 80s, the cost was over $70 per watt for solar panels, which is, cost prohibitive in many ways. And that was largely due to just high manufacturing and material costs. But about 40 years later, by 2023, prices fell to below 40 cents per watt for utility scale systems. So that's a huge decrease in cost just to make solar panels. At the same time, we can see that our solar generation capacity in the US has just skyrocketed. So in 1980, it was pretty much negligible. We didn't really have solar generation capacity going on because we didn't have solar panels, or at least not many of them. But the growth really accelerated after 2010 due to supportive policies like the solar investment tax credit and due to declining costs and just better technology. So now we've got about 140 gigawatts of solar capacity in the US alone in 2023. And it turns out that, that this is really good, that, solar is good not only for our climate goals, but it's also good for some of the other good life goals. So at scale, clean renewable energy can actually reduce people's utility costs, especially those who can least afford them. So it helps people with poverty. Having more solar reduces air pollution, and that air pollution is causing that causes climate change. It's also making us sick. So if we can reduce that air pollution, we can stay healthier. And then on top of it all, manufacturing and installing solar panels and really scaling that up brings good, decent paying jobs to our area. And that can be all over the place. It's not confined to cities, but it can also be rural areas as well. So today, to talk about solar and to talk about just energy in Wisconsin and in the Driftless area, we're joined by Tomas Herrera, Eric Christensen, and Isaac Worley from Ethos Green Power Cooperative, which is based in Viroqua, Wisconsin. And Ethos is working to provide the highest quality renewable energy services to the Driftless region, including our rural areas. So I would invite now Tomas, Eric, and Isaac to join us. And Isaac, I'm gonna throw you the first question here. Uh, who is Ethos Green Power Cooperative? And the word cooperative, I think, might catch people. So if you could also explain just what is a cooperative and how does that differ from other business organizations?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having us, Casey. It's our pleasure. I think, what is a cooperative is like a really good place to start. Like you're saying, not very many people know what happens in a cooperative, and not many people have worked at a cooperative. They're not very common. So I think like just the basis, the general idea of what a cooperative is it's a way to give the people a little more ownership in the decision making, sometimes the profit sharing. Really, it just takes it from a central owned business to one that's split up between a multitude of people. Oftentimes, in the case of Ethos, we're a worker owned cooperative. So our workers are eligible to become owners of the business, and be able to help make big decisions and also get some of the profit at the end of the year. So it's a really big bonus for employees instead of having a central owner.
And so then what is Ethos all about?
Yeah, so Ethos in general, I mean, it's kind of in the name, right? Ethos also means ethics, right? Like we're focused on trying to do the right thing. And I think where we've really directed ourselves is towards like the right thing for people. So internally, we focus a lot on bringing our employees up, uplifting them. We try and move people up internally. We try and pay people good. We try and offer the best benefits that we can. And as a worker-owned cooperative, we try and give people the voice that they really need to feel empowered and successful here at Ethos. I think we also, look a lot towards like serving our community. So Casey, you had spoke a little bit about how people in poverty or, those in disadvantaged communities can sometimes struggle with energy costs. And so, if we're able to provide solar, like for the Ho Chunk Nation, or we've been working with local CAP organizations, to take some of that heating assistance money, and instead of paying a monthly bill, we're now taking it and we're investing in solar to actually long-term offset these costs that, really put people in places of struggle. Like that's really, really important. So we work to serve our local community in that way. And then just, in general, we're working to fight the climate crisis. And so that involves us installing solar in an effort to reduce carbon emissions, so that it's a little more people focused on a global scale. We're trying to provide that clean air and better health benefits for everybody, not us just locally, but across the globe. So I think who is Ethos? We're a company that is using solar as our best vehicle to really uplift us as people.
That's a great answer. Wow. Eric, I want to jump to you. Could you give us just a sort of the 30,000 foot view on how residential solar works? Because Ethos does residential work in solar, right? You also do heat pumps. You also do some commercials that work with businesses on solar. Just give us for our listeners who are primarily, resident, interested in sort of the residential side. Give us that 30,000 foot view on how residential solar works.
Yeah, sure, Casey. So I guess the way that I would explain solar to somebody maybe that had no idea on what impact or how it would work on the residential side, um, it is kind of a way of decentralizing yourself from being in control by the grid, right? By your utility company. You're gaining some energy independence. You're generating electricity at your home, whether it's on a rooftop or whether it's on a ground mount. If you have room and space for a ground mount option, you're collecting the energy from the sun, which there's no cost for doing that. Uh, Converting that energy in a clean way. There's no, carbon byproducts coming when solar is generating electricity, and using it throughout your household, right? So the more that you can generate based off of the amount that you consume, that also has a financial impact for you. So if I'm generating the same amount that I consume in a month, when my utility bill comes up, I'm going to be looking at a very low or completely zeroed out utility bill. You do often still have some connection charges from your utility company, but those are pretty minor in comparison to a, $200, $300, $400 energy bill every single month. And if you're offsetting that entire, several $100 energy bill and looking at a connection charge of $30 to $50 in some cases, that's got a real return on investment over a short period of time. So I mean, there's financial benefits to it, there's environmental benefits to it, there's community benefits to it, there's resiliency and independence, especially when you pair solar with a battery, and you have storage. At that point, you're resilient if there's an outage in your area, or if for some reason, God forbid, there's a long-term outage, you have some resiliency in those situations. So on the residential side, I mean, we really just talk to our customers and, find out what their goals are, and really just try to fit those goals with a solution that, fits their needs in the best way.
So, and this is open to anyone here. What is like the biggest, one or two myths about solar energy in Wisconsin that you wish would go away? That that people have that just aren't true, and you wish you never had to answer that question again.
You talk to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of those two main ones because you do hear a lot of objections, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
and if you got more than two, go for it. That's fine.
Yeah, I would say one of the main ones, people just they don't understand how it works, right? I mean, I've seen people comment, you're never gonna make that money back. I mean, there's a cost for going solar, right? You do have to pay for the equipment, you have to pay for the labor for install. But there's also a ton of incentives that you can explore that are attached with it. So, you look at a 30% federal tax credit. That's literally 30% of that system that you're getting put back in your pocket. Most of the time, maybe people think solar doesn't work in Wisconsin, right? We're not California, we're not Arizona, we're not Florida. Solar works great in Wisconsin. The average payback period for somebody that gets a system is about 12 and a half years in Wisconsin. I'll tell you, if someone could have told me, back in early 2000, hey, if you want to pay this much and lock in your fuel rate for the next 30 years, I probably would have done it, right? I mean, that's kind of the same concept in a different way that people can, come up positively with solar. So I think it's just a lack of understanding in general on I don't believe that a lot of people really understand energy, right? You flip the light on, you turn your TV on, it works. They don't know why it works. They just know that it works. So having that conversation with people and being able to explain a little bit more about what their energy economy in their household truly looks like and how they can kind of adapt it to work better in their situation. That's kind of, I know it's not necessarily like a myth, but it's something that people just don't understand.
Sure. You touched on incentives. I'm curious to know where Ethos sort of sees the trends going with incentives now that there'll be a new administration at the federal level. And I know there's some questions about whether or not some of those incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act will continue. What are your, as folks on the inside here seeing, in this industry, what are you projecting?
I mean, personal opinion, right? After, I don't want to necessarily speak for everybody here at Ethos, but we all do have a fairly similar approach here. Both sides of the political spectrum generally want to save money. So whether you're red, blue, in the middle, completely independent, whatever, that is generally something that people want to do. And these incentives that are available, while they may modify in one way or another, personally, I don't see them going away. The federal tax credit is, it's currently scheduled out to the beginning of basically 2032. That's still a decent ways away. There may be some changes here or there, but there's going to have to be a lot of legwork for that to go away. And I think there's enough people behind a lot of these policies that we won't see massive changes there. Again, that's my personal opinion, but
sure. So somebody who might be considering putting up solar at their house, for example, doesn't necessarily need to panic that these incentives are just going to disappear, in 2 months. And again, I know that, if you had a crystal ball,
right.
you would say that, they're probably not going to disappear. There's no need to necessarily panic and throw up a system, or, just throw your hands up and say, I can't put up a system anymore.
Yeah, I would say that, if someone is interested in moving forward with solar, securing those incentives over the next year is totally realistic. I can't speak for 2 to 3 years down the road necessarily, but as long as the system is installed when those incentives are available, after talking to several different tax preparers, they would secure those incentives, right? So if someone was to install in early 2025 a system, secure the 30% federal tax credit, and then late 2025, the incentive would for some reason go away. In all rights, that person should be able to secure that entire tax credit still, because it was available when they signed, right?
Got it. Isaac, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to jump in. I think the biggest one is the 30% federal tax credit, which for the most part it's a bipartisan sort of policy. Like both sides support it. We've gone through multiple administrations, over the last 12 years that there's been a solar tax credit. Don't quote me on that if it's been exactly 12 years that it's been out, but it's been out for a long time and it hasn't gone away, right? I would say almost with 100% certainty, not quite, but it would be very, very, very unlikely that the 30% federal tax credit would go away. Some things that are probably are in a little more jeopardy would be some of the newer IRA funding. So like some of the niche, not as like rolled out sort of things, like if you're doing energy efficiency upgrades and installing like a heat pump, there's some federal funding there that like the states haven't even decided on programs or taken that money and distributed it yet. That's going to be a thing that's not as bipartisan. There's not as much support there, and it's something that's not fully rolled out yet. So, I think that there is a little bit of concern there in terms of losing those benefits. A lot of people also talk about like tariffs and policy. tariffs, funny enough, we've been dealing with solar tariffs for the last 8 years. In fact, the tariffs have probably gotten stricter under the most recent administration as it relates to solar. So when you're looking at global supply chain and prices as it translates to customers, probably not going to see a huge difference. It is going to tick up slightly just because we're seeing a lot more US manufacturing. So I think that that's something to consider for people. There is still a lot of cheaper residential modules on the market that will be phasing out to some slightly more expensive US made products in this upcoming year. And I think the last thing is we have a lot of like smaller state funding. So like we have Focus on Energy, which is a state program. And that just because of increased solar adoption in the state, their pool of money that Focus on Energy gets, it comes off of your utility bill. There's a little line item there, and they pull a chunk out, and that funds Focus on Energy. There's only so much money that they dump into Focus on Energy, and as more and more people get solar, year after year, we've seen that incentive ratchet down for customers, just because it's being distributed to more people, and that pool of money is limited. So I think that, like, you know, those are probably state incentives might ratchet down a little bit, not a lot. They're already not huge. Federal 30% federal tax credit, I don't foresee going away at all, at least until it's supposed to expire, you know. And then some of the more newer IRA policies that have not been yet rolled out or funded by states, I think there is some jeopardy there going forward.
Got it. What do you guys see as, so I showed that chart of solar capacity. What are you seeing in the driftless area? Are we, you know, are you seeing interest in solar growing? Are you doing, you know, seeing more installations? What are there any like trends and the types of installations that are going on? Heat pumps, are you seeing people starting to install some of those? Like what are you sort of seeing over the last couple of years?
I mean, there is definitely an ebb and a flow, right? I mean, we see a little bit of a lower interest depending on the time of the year, but I mean, I think over the past few years, the interest has definitely increased. We're starting to see increased interest through agricultural, you know, farms. There's different incentives that are available for specifically agricultural customers and rural small businesses called the REAP grant. So we're starting to see more and more interest in, you know, maybe people that 5 years ago, they never would have thought about going solar. So I would definitely say the interest is increasing. You know, Isaac, maybe you can speak a little bit more to what interest was, you know, 2019, 2020 compared to now. I know, again, it ebbs and flows, but there's a substantial amount of interest in it. I would say, you know, from residential customers to commercial customers, small businesses, agricultural. I think people are a little bit more intrigued than they have been. I think they're more curious. And I think the idea of having energy independence is really gaining ground for a lot of people, in addition to the cost saving benefit.
Yeah, I think, you know, kind of like your chart suggests, it wasn't until more recently that solar became more affordable for the general public. So I think in our kind of initial years there, you know, we saw some early adopters, some people who realized, okay, there's actually some financial benefit here now, and they were also, you know, sustainably focused. So I think we saw that in some of the early adopters, and then just like Ethos as a company has been growing. You know, you look across the state, solar companies in general have been growing. The demand is increasing, and really, I think it's just as we've gone through the years, we've started to get past the early adopters, the people who realize it makes fiscal sense. And now we're starting to break into more of the general public, like, hey, we've seen a solar installation at their house and at their house and at this, grocery store that I go to. Maybe I should look into it. It seems like there's more of a societal shift that is happening where people realize that there actually are some benefits, and maybe now is the time to start to consider. So I think just like the growth in our company, and also just like as you look out into the community, it seems like that shift has been occurring and is continuing to happen at probably a faster pace than what we realize.
Sure. Tomas, why should we care at all about where our energy comes from?
I think that's a great question. I've been thinking a lot about that just internally on my own sort of journey into awareness about where my energy comes from. I think that when we're born and brought into the world, we're sort of just attached to the status quo on where how our food is produced, how our food is delivered to us, how our energy is produced, how our energy is delivered to us. There's such the Industrial Revolution created such a large apparatus around us that we sort of become unconscious of it as regular Americans, and especially as a privileged individual, I think you can become so unconscious to it because it doesn't really reach a pain point until you start to recognize, like, wow, I'm sort of deficient in some nutrition, and my doctor's telling me I need to get more fiber, or I need to like pay attention to what I'm eating, or I'm starting to notice that there's a lot of unusual weather happening, and maybe the way that we produce energy is contributing to that. So as we come into awareness of the system that we're in and the being of the beneficiaries of that system, I think the shift starts to happen when you recognize that you're not just a subject to the apparatus, but a participant in it. And for me, that kind of awareness started to happen first in my relationship to food. And I can see sort of a similar pattern happening where organic food, natural grown stuff, that was sort of a fringe, place for a long time. You'd go to the grocery store, there'd be like one little section of the grocery store that was organic, or you could find that. And now it's being produced at scale across like major grocery stores. And I think that the same thing is sort of happening in energy, where people are starting to recognize, or I know that I was becoming more aware of my energy consumption. I lived in a house that had really inefficient heating, and my bills were really high. And that was the first sign that I need to start paying attention to what my energy usage is. And it was an all electric house. I was using electric baseboard heat, and it was just grotesquely expensive to heat. And the more I learned about how energy works, I learned about saving energy first by blocking access to outside, getting inside, insulation, better doors, better windows, that sort of thing. And it just started to unlock a lot of awareness for me. And then I suddenly became empowered by this idea that, like, oh, I actually have some agency here. I can start to like exercise some freedom around how I use energy and where that energy comes from. And that, I think, is the most exciting piece about knowing where your energy comes from, how it's generated, and how you can take kind of that power back. That to me, I think, is what why it's important, is that it gives you power over your life. No pun intended.
That's interesting. So the first time I really became aware and really thought about where my energy came from, I remember I was in graduate school, actually, and a professor said, every time you're turning on the light switch, that's a political act.
Yeah.
And a bunch of us were like, well, what are you talking about? And he said, well, you're turning on the light switch, that electricity is coming from somewhere and it's being generated somewhere. And that generation is, that's somebody's job. Whether it might be start in a coal mine in West Virginia or Wyoming. And so that's workers doing particular work that is potentially very unsafe. It's not good for the climate. There's all sorts of things that are happening when you turn that light switch on and you're making a decision. And you can either have blinders on while you do that, or you can question it and you can think, well, wait, is there another way here? So yeah, it's funny how like that one sort of question has made me then sort of launched me down this path of thinking more about energy. So how there are some people might say this is a huge issue, right? A huge problem. And I'm just one little person, right? And there's these utility companies and there's these, big governments that are really defining the terms of the system. And I'm just sort of a pawn in this system. So a question that I have for you guys is how can we, both as individuals, and as a, community or society, take meaningful climate action when we're just, we're maybe just one person in this whole system? How do you respond to that?
I think it's funny when you point out we're just one person, right? Big acts or like large events generally don't happen instantly just at once. It generally happens, take something simple. It's coming along to the new year. I got a couple extra pounds on me. Everybody wants to lose some weight, usually around the new year. It takes not just one day, not just 1 week, not just 1 month, but consistent effort and like habit forming patterns to be able to meet that goal, right? You're not going to see it after 1 day, but you start doing the same thing and you start like changing one little bit about what you do on a day by day basis. And then all of a sudden you create a pattern. And then all of a sudden you're seeing an improvement in that area, right? And I think the same thing can be applied to something like climate action. You might not be able to make a huge impact in the grand scheme, but if we have an entire community of people that are changing from, old technology, old lighting options to like LED lighting, upgrading to energy efficient appliances, insulating their homes for more, efficient energy, adopting renewables like solar panels and supporting green energy programs offered by their utilities, taking a different transportation choice if that's available, if they're able to walk to work a couple of blocks versus starting up their car, driving, letting it run because it's winter here in Wisconsin, right? Letting it run for a little while so they're warm enough, and then all of a sudden getting to work, in 3 minutes. Maybe they could walk or maybe they could bike. I think those little actions that are taken by small or large communities add up in a really, really big way. So as one person, you might not be able to do a lot directly, but you can do a ton indirectly. And if you are speaking the truth to other people around you, and they start to model the behavior that you're showing, at that point, you're not just one person, you're a community, or in our case, a cooperative.
And that leads me back sort of to a final question is with your cooperative, what would you like our listeners to know about your cooperative, and how can they help you be successful? You're helping the driftless area in incredible ways. How can our listeners and folks at the Sustainability Institute, I guess, what should they know about your cooperative, and how can we help you?
I'll start by
Go for it.
saying that it's, I think, really exciting. I just started working here, but what excited me about working here was the opportunity to have a lot of community outreach and education and be a leader in maybe like helping to bring more awareness to folks and giving people more information and about sort of the larger context around solar, how it works, and how it might be something that, if not today, sometime down the line, somebody can explore participating in. So I think what we really are is, we do free site assessments. People can reach out to us, have us come out to their place, take a look at what's going on, look at their bills, and give them a very honest assessment of, will this particular technology work for you in this location? Same thing with mini split heat pumps. And what's really blown me away about how Ethos operates, true to their name, is they're not going to BS people and say, oh yeah, sure, we can throw up 16 things and generate this, and you might get a payback in 70 years or whatever. That there really is like a care to doing it correctly and making sure that people have something that not only works for them, but we can stand behind. We, not only put up these systems, but then act as a partner for the life of the system. And every one of our customers is now part of sort of this ecosystem. They almost become like part of the cooperative. And I really find that role that we play to be much more, again, to keep using this word, empowering to our community beyond just a business that does a thing. Like Isaac said earlier, that this is just a vehicle for us to uplift the people within our community and the people within our cooperative, and have a more functional and hopefully cleaner, brighter, more sustainable future.
Isaac or Eric, anything to add?
I think like Tomas said, we approach with education. The success of solar and our company relies on selling a product that works. And if you sell solar in a situation where it doesn't work, well, that individual person is going to go out and give it a bad review. Solar doesn't work, right? And so it's important that we, as stewards of our product and also this technology, our vehicle, we have to make sure we set it up for success, and we set the people up for success. And I think that, when it comes to other people supporting, us, a big part of it is just, we work hard to provide education, and if additional areas like the Sustainability Institute provide similar or the same education, it allows people to make the informed decision, and then now they're educated, right? So a large percentage of our sales comes from referrals. We do the education of the customer, and then the customer gets that experience, they learn, it works, right? And then they're the stewards for not only solar, but also us, And so I think that, when you also asked previously, how can you as an individual person make an impact, right? Just being educated on what's currently happening and how you can help, and the people who actually have the resources to go solar are the biggest advocates for it. They're some of our biggest driving force. Our role in this is strictly basically education and providing a resource that works. So I think that's when it comes to supporting us and our mission, I think it's just kind of standing behind that same sort of march. This is a new thing. I know it's scary. I know you don't have to think about it, but it's worth thinking about. It's something that actually does make a difference. So yeah.
And Eric, I'll give you the final word.
Yeah. So, honestly, the way that I think people could support us the most is understand that we are a local business, right? we are a small local business, and there's many local businesses out there that I think can sometimes fall to the wayside of, you know, a larger presence. And that larger presence isn't usually, at least not always, the better choice. You know, they may not have as strong of a pulse on the community, the area, the people, like what's important, especially when it comes to us as an installer. You know, we work with 12, 13 different utility companies in our area. We have to be pretty understanding on, you know, what the rates are, what the policies are for each and every utility company that we work with, to where, you know, you see like these advertisements on Facebook or something, get solar for free at no cost. Like, if I was to ask anybody that wanted to help us, I would ask them to, you know, not believe that kind of thing, and like understand that a lot of those are just advertising tactics. But at the end of the day, solar is a very valuable thing for the majority of people. And like Isaac had spoke to, you know, we're not going to sell a system that's not a solution, that doesn't save money, you know, that doesn't accomplish the goals that the customer sets out in the first place. Our mission is to serve our customers, right? So if anybody was looking to help us as a business or a company, you know, sending people that are aligned with our mission, with our goals, speaking the truth a little bit in areas that maybe the truth isn't spoken so much in the world right now, and just continuing to, you know, encourage sustainable practices and think about, you know, what their impact today is going to mean in 5, 10, 20 years from now.
Awesome. And I think that's a great place to leave off. So Tomas, Eric, and Isaac, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you guys are busy. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us. You know, we're certainly grateful here at the Sustainability Institute for your time, and I know the community in the area, I mean, appreciates what you're doing. You're fighting a good fight and changing the system, and making this planet better. So thank you so much for everything you do, and good luck with everything moving forward.
Thanks, Casey. Right back
You
at
bet.
you.
To stay connected with the Sustainability Institute and stay aware of upcoming events, head on over to our website to join our mailing list. Once again, we want to thank you for watching this Sustainability Chat. We hope to see you soon.